Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for, Foreign Tours. And what I want to do is spend a few minutes. I'm not going to overanalyze, but I do think there were some interesting things that came out of these trips. You get a chance to kind of see these teams ahead of schedule, and I do think there were some interesting things that came out. So the teams that we're going to talk about right now, Kentucky, Arkansas, Auburn, Alabama, and Oklahoma, all took trips in the last couple weeks, all concluded trips by now. And I just want to kind of hit on a few things that I noticed with each of them. We just wrapped with Kentucky, Calipari versus Feinbaum. Let's quickly get into Kentucky Summer Tour. Not going to bore you with stats, not going to bore you with many details. I'm just going to be blunt, just point blank blunt. Kentucky looked not only better than I thought they would, they looked a lot better than I thought they would, and let me explain why. First of all, I have been on the Jacob Toppin hype train for really about 3 years now. So I've said, he's a work in progress. He's a developmental player. But even dating back to the COVID year, you can find tweets of me saying that I believe that Jacob Toppin would eventually be a first-round NBA draft pick, or at the very least an NBA player. And this was when he was coming off the bench after averaging about 4 or 5 points in 1 year at Rhode Island. Well, last year, it was kind of the same deal for Jacob Toppin at Kentucky. He was in a backup role to Keon Brooks. But every time that he got on the court, especially in big games, good things tended to happen. In that loss to Auburn early in the season, remember that was an iconic game. He had a couple big plays, but 14 points at LSU when LSU was playing some really good basketball. He had 11 points against Kansas in a win at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. He had 11 points in a win, or loss, against Tennessee. 13 points in a win over Alabama late in the year. And so one thing that always stood out to me was that he seemingly played his best basketball in the biggest games against the best competition. And what that said to me was that essentially he's an NBA player. You know how NBA players, sometimes they don't thrive in college because the court is so condensed? Well, when he could just get up and down and hoop, the kid could absolutely play. And if you watched these foreign tour games for Kentucky, it was impossible to not watch this kid stand out. Specifically, the third game that they played, I am just telling you right now, he looked like a National Player of the Year candidate. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win National Player of the Year, especially because he's got the reigning National Player of the Year on the court with him. But he had 27 points. Kentucky basketball actually shared kind of a video highlight reel of him from that game on Twitter and Instagram. I encourage you to go find it if you have 2 minutes. Guy looks like a pro. He's hitting step-back threes. He's taking people off the dribble. He's finishing at the rim. And the one thing that I liked especially was that he was very aggressive defensively. He's a kid that obviously he's Obi Toppin's brother, and he spent most of the summer training for the NBA draft and playing against pro players. And you can just see the confidence in him oozing out like, I was practicing against pros all summer. This ain't nothing but a thing to me. And I'm telling you, I believe he is an all-SEC caliber player. Now, on top of Jacob Toppin, a couple other guys stood out. First of all, Damien Collins is a guy that, oh my goodness, very much stood out. 6'10", former McDonald's All-American, and he was kind of one of those guys. I'll give him a little bit of credit. He came to Kentucky last year. If you look at all the stupid mock draft boards, and I hate preseason mock drafts because I don't think the guys that do them, for the most part, I think there's a couple that do them well. Sam Vecini at The Athletic does a really good job. But for the most part, they just take the high school recruiting rankings from the previous year, plug them in, and you have a kid like Damien Collins who wasn't even ready to play college basketball last year, let alone the NBA, projected as an NBA draft pick. But to his credit, he didn't play a ton last year, but rather than transferring or doing whatever, came back, and he's just a different dude. He's a kid that's newer to basketball, newer to weight training. This was all a process. He looked unbelievable in the Bahamas. Go back, find the YouTube videos. The kid was incredible. 3-4 just wicked dunks. And, he's one, I don't think he's as far along as Jacob Toppin, But this is a kid with the crazy upside that he has. I could see him having a couple games where he just drops 20 out of nowhere, and he's another one that looks like he is going to end up being a first-round pick. I am planting my flag. I believe Jacob Toppin will be a first-round pick, even though he is actually about 22, going to be 23 years old. Damien Collins, I think, could be a first-round pick next year. Finally, I'd wrap by saying Antonio Reeves, the transfer from Illinois State, looked awesome as well. He was actually the MVP of the Bahamas trip overall. And what I would say about Antonio Reeves, the thing that stood out to me is that he was a kid who transferred up from the mid-major level, played at Illinois State last year. And the one thing you always have to wonder when a kid transfers up a level is he going to be able to handle the step up in competition? Well, it wasn't a problem for Antonio Reeves. He averaged a team-high 17 points per game on the trip, and he hit over 50% from three on the trip. And he had, I thought maybe outside of Jacob Toppin, the best game of any Kentucky player in the Bahamas, 23 points in their final game of the trip. And he just looks really good. And he looks like the kind of guy that can step in, be instant offense, get you 14 to 16 on any given night, maybe 18, 20. I'll just say overall, Kentucky looked a lot better than I thought they would. I thought what kind of stood out, Oscar Tshiebwe got his numbers, but like Oscar Tshiebwe, I don't want to say he looked like just a dude. He didn't look like just a dude, but there were other guys that stepped out. I had Kentucky as a preseason like probably 7 or 8 in the country. If there are 7 or 8 teams that are more talented than them coming into the year, we're going to have the best season in college basketball ever. Not saying, and it goes back to the Calipari conversation from last segment. Calipari's got to step up. No excuses. But this team looked better than I thought. Cason Wallace, another freshman, I thought looked very good as well. Athletic, plays hard on defense. This team is longer, they're more athletic, and they potentially shoot the three ball better. Plus, they have 2 returning starters who are both in their 4th year of college basketball, Oscar Tshiebwe and Severe Wheeler. Really like this team a lot. Let's keep it going with Arkansas. Arkansas played in Spain and Italy. They go 4-0. And it's absolutely fascinating because they went 4-0 against professional teams. And on the one hand, there was stuff to really like, and on the other, there was stuff to be concerned about. Credit to Coach Muss. He didn't beat around the bush. He did a media availability after the, after the 4 games. The final game, Arkansas had 30 turnovers. His exact quote was something to the effect, let me see if I can find the quote really quick. The turnovers are ridiculous. Words cannot describe how concerned I am about our turnovers. And so I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it and say it was all, rainbows and sunshine. But what I would also say is you're talking about a team with 11 new players, really only one guy that played last year. And even though there is definitely cause for concern, or there are concerns coming out, 1, you went 4-0. But 2, you watch that team, it's impossible not to see the upside. Super long, super athletic. They could just throw bodies at you one after the other after the other. Breakout star of this event, Trevon Brazile, the forward from Missouri. And I'll just be honest. So I was texting Zach Kroll, our college basketball writer at AT Online. He's been on this podcast before. I really don't remember this kid at Missouri. Now, he was kind of an upside long-term project player. He came on late in the year. This kid, another one, I'm planting my flag. Jacob Toppin is a first-round pick this year at Kentucky. Trevon Brazile is a first-round pick this year at Arkansas. You want a crazy stat. First of all, 28 points in the final game of the trip. Here's a crazy stat for you. This is insane. He shot 93% from two-point range on this trip. 93%. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that they were playing the best teams ever, but you're playing some form of professional teams. You're playing grown men. 93%, 28 of 30 from two-point range. Super long, super athletic, dunked the crap out of the ball. I mean, this guy is just a total game changer in a way that I wasn't anticipating. To keep the conversation going on Arkansas, I thought their 2 older players, the guys that have been there before, I thought were excellent. First of all, Devo Davis, really interesting player. Was a breakout guy as a freshman in 2020, 2021 when Arkansas made its first Elite Eight under Eric Musselman. And everybody, including me, had crazy expectations on this guy coming into last year. He was my preseason player of the year. And I don't know whether it was because, the expectations were too high or, NIL got involved and now he's representing companies and his face is everywhere. But he kind of had a little bit of a drop-off last year in a way that I wasn't expecting. And so to see him come on this foreign tour, and what I liked was two things. One, he looked very confident. He played with a high degree of confidence. And two, I mean, he just produced. But, I mean, more than anything, he just looked like, okay, I'm the older guy. I'm the veteran guy. My team needs me to be great every night. Bring it every night. Maybe not be great. Be great's an exaggeration, but my team needs me to bring it every single night. I need to be the emotional leader. I need to be the spiritual leader. I need to be accountable. And I thought he was that throughout the trip. Finished well at the basket. Does what he does. He's not a great three-point shooter, but I thought overall he just looked more confident. He looked like the player that I thought would be SEC Player of the Year last year. Now, I don't think he'll be that this year. I think Arkansas has too many good players, but really like him. Kamani Johnson. Fun fact, he is Dakari Johnson's brother. Remember Dakari Johnson from Kentucky. But Kamani Johnson, I thought, played really well too. Veteran guy, older guy, the only other player on this roster to come back from last season. He looked awesome. And he's another guy. He is what he is. He's a rebounder, energy, hustle guy. But had 10 points and 10 rebounds in the final game, a game that came down to the wire. I don't think you can undersell what just having an older veteran player does for this team. Keep in mind, you can win at the highest level with freshmen in college basketball. Kentucky won a title with Anthony Davis. Duke won a title with Jahlil Okafor. There's been other good freshmen in college basketball. But even the teams with elite freshmen, and Arkansas does have elite freshmen, you do need impact from older players. You don't need them to be stars. Quinn Cook wasn't a star at Duke. Terrence Jones wasn't a star at Kentucky. Darius Miller wasn't a star at Kentucky when they won a title with Anthony Davis. But you need veterans to be good enough and be those guys, and that's what I really liked out of Arkansas. One other guy that stood out for Arkansas, I thought that Barry Dunning, freshman from Alabama, I thought he looked really good. Was a guy I didn't really know what to expect. I haven't seen him a ton in high school. Was a guy that, freshman could easily get lost in the shuffle. Thought he gave them really good minutes. Shout out to Arkansas, 4-0 on their summer trip as well. Let's keep it going. I would say the surprise team of these summer tours, let's give it up to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama, look, by no means is Alabama coming off a quote-unquote bad season, right? But 2 years ago, they win the SEC tournament. They go to the Sweet 16. And I think everybody just kind of thought last year it would kind of continue that way, especially when they started out early really well with a win over Gonzaga in Seattle, a win over Houston at home. And everyone's like, oh my goodness, Alabama's just arrived. They're college basketball power right now. And it just didn't happen. They were up and down all year. They had some injuries. Javon Quinterly gets hurt in the NCAA tournament. But it was really just about consistency. So more than anything, what stood out to me was a couple things. One, really good assist numbers. Two, they went 3-0, and we'll get to some players. But Nate Oates said something very interesting. He said something to the effect of, I really like our guys, and everybody is bought into their role. Or something to the effect of, there are guys coming off the bench who really believe in the role that we've provided for them. And what that says to me is that I think there was some infighting in the program last year. I would guess, they had a lot of transfer turnover, and I don't think that was coincidental. But I think more than anything, when they went out in the portal this year, I think they were very particular about the types of dudes that they're going to bring in. Are you going to be a veteran? Are you going to be an adult in the locker room? Are you going to accept a role? And are you going to be a leader for everybody else? And the answer appears to be yes. Now, the star player of the tournament wasn't one of those transfers. It was Brandon Miller, 6'9", McDonald's All-American, originally from Tennessee. Kid is awesome. I mean, he's just skinny, wing, athlete kid. But he's one that is a projected first-round pick, and I think he's going to get there. And he just had an incredible summer tour for them. 28 points in their second game, 21 points in their final game, 17 points in the first one. And then I would also give credit to another kid, Namari Burnett. He's a former McDonald's All-American, began his career at Texas Tech, transfers to Alabama, gets hurt last preseason, misses all of last year. And I kind of talked to somebody, around the Alabama program during the summer, and he kind of told me that they thought Namari Burnett was the missing piece. He's kind of a guy that can play on the ball, he can play off the ball, he can kick and drive, he can shoot threes. He was kind of the guy that was the missing piece last year. I've had a chance to interview him. Really good kid, nice kid, sweet kid. And so I think kind of that talent, that attitude, the team part of it, I think he was the guy that they were missing last year. Well, he looks really good in their preseason trip. 19 points in Game 2, 13 in Game 3. Nate Oates, of course, gives out the hard hat for the player who he deems to have played the hardest, do the little things to make you win. Namari Burnett did win the hard hat on the final game of the trip, and so credit where it's due. I thought Alabama looked better than I was expecting. Nate Oates insinuated there were some comments that he made that made me feel like maybe this group is a little bit more bought in than last year's group, and that's just me kind of reading the tea leaves. But I just bring it up to say I was really, really impressed by them. Really quickly, two other teams. One, Auburn went 2-1. Now, I will say, in their loss, it was to literally the Israeli national team. Israel, basketball-wise, is one of the best countries in the world. They have guys in the NBA. This was their senior national team. So this is 24, 25, 30, 31-year-old grown men. I believe they had at least one player that played in the NBA. But I'll tell you, Auburn's games were on ESPN. I didn't catch every single minute of all of them, but they looked really good. I mean, they looked really good as well. The first win was by like 40-plus points, and the thing that stood out, super deep and can play a bunch of guys. Bruce Pearl said after the event, he goes, I think we got 12 or 13 guys that can contribute on this team. Now, normally I would be concerned about that. I've talked about it with Gonzaga. I've talked about it with other schools. Kentucky, that's always an issue with John Calipari. He plays 6-7 guys. Same with Arkansas, Eric Musselman. Bruce Pearl's a guy. He'll go deep into his bench if he believes that he has the right group of guys. In terms of individual players, one, I thought Johan Traore, freshman McDonald's All-American. I think I mentioned this in the preview of these summer tours. He was the lowest rated 5-star according to 24/7 Sports. I believe he was the 25th ranked player in the country. And I remember seeing that and saying, I saw this kid in high school. If he's the 25th ranked player in the country, then this is the best high school class ever. I think he was underrated. I think he is going to be really good at Auburn. Thought he looked really good over the course of the summer tour, including, by the way, early, first two games that they played, I believe he went for 20-plus each. Janae Broom was really good. He is the transfer from Morehead State, 18 points, 12 rebounds against that Israeli national team. I thought Alan Flanagan, who 2 years ago was one of Auburn's best players, gets hurt in the offseason, comes back last year. He isn't 100%. I think he's finally starting to look good. Auburn goes 2-1 in its trip. Finally, really quickly, a team that's kind of more intriguing to me than I think they get credit for, the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma went 3-0 in a foreign tour. I believe they were in Spain and France in totality. Guy to know there, Grant Sherfield, transfer from Nevada, averaged 20 points and 6 assists each of the last 2 years. I believe he was like number 6 in the country in assists last year, was the preseason Mountain West Player of the Year. It doesn't work out. He leaves Steve Alford, and he ends up at Oklahoma. Had a couple really good games there. They also have a kid named Milos Uzan, who is a freshman, kind of a bigger guard, who played really well. Had 9 points, 9 assists, one game, double figures another. Oklahoma, another team to watch.